handler, and then we want to add that to the application context. Begin request event, and here you can see the list of events that we just saw in the Word document, and this will be implemented to map to and on begin request event handler, which we're going to add momentarily here. So now we need to go down and create that event handler down here and add a protected sub called on begin request, and that's going to accept a sender as object and the event args as event args. So this event handler will fire at the beginning of any request to our website. So there's one more little bit of cleanup that we should do with respect to this event handler, and we'll do that up here in our dispose method. And what we'll do here is that we will remove the handler, and that's application context begin request, and we are removing the begin request event handler. And then we will just set that event handler that we just removed equal nothing. So now let's write some information out to our file every time that begin request event fires. So we'll take our code here, where we're writing out the file, we'll put it down here in our begin request event, and we will just write out here on begin request. Since this event fires every time a request starts, let's add a little more information that we're writing out to our file here. And let's take that application context and let's go to the request object again, and let's take the user agent information, write that out, and let's write out a couple more pieces here. And we'll write out the user host address. And lastly, let's write out what do we write out? Let's take the URL to string and write that out. So that's good. Now we should be all set here to test out our HTTP filter. We have some information being written out when we initialize and dispose of the application as well as with the request. So let's go over and see how we install this filter and use it in a website. In order to install and test our filter, the first thing we need to do is compile the assembly. So let's do that. And everything looks good there. Now we need to add a sample website where we can install and test the filter. So we'll add a new website, just an ASP.NET website, and we'll call it website VB. And then the first thing that we'll need to do in the website is add a reference to our assembly that contains our HTTP module. So we'll add the reference. In this case, we'll just reference the class library project in our solution. Then we need to go to the web.config file and actually install the HTTP module. To do that, we add an element to the HTTP module section, And we need to add the fully qualified class name, and that is HTTP filter VB, and the namespace was HDI, and the class name is HTTP filter. We need to give it a unique identifying name, which we'll call it test HTTP filter. Then what we're going to do is go over to our default ASPX page and just add a little text. We don't need to have text in order for the module or the filter to function, but this will let us know that the page has fully loaded, so we'll just call it testing HTTP filter. And then in order to see what's happening at different points, we'll set a few breakpoints over here in our class at the beginning of each of the methods, and that will allow us to see when we hit those different points in the application. And I'm going to run this in Firefox rather than IE, because if we run it in IE in the debug mode and then we shut down IE, it shuts down the debug mode in Visual Studio, and we would never see the dispose method being reached. It would be reached and it would write out our text to our text file, but we wouldn't be able to see it. But if we do it in Firefox, which doesn't automatically shut down the debug mode in Visual Studio, we will see it reach that breakpoint. So let's make our website the startup project here, and let's fire things up. So here we go. We'll start it in the debug mode, and we'll let the web.config be modified to enable debugging. And the first method we should hit is our init method, and there it is with the application starting. We'll continue on from there, and we'll next reach the onBegin request, which is the handler we added to be called right when the request is first initiated. We'll let it continue from there, and our page comes up. Now we haven't hit the dispose method yet because the application is still going, the page is still live. So we'll shut down our page here, and the application is still going in the debug mode in Visual Studio, but what I'll do is I'll go down to the local server and stop that, and when I stop that, you see that we reach the dispose method. We'll let it continue on and actually shut everything down. Now we'll go back over to our website here and just refresh it, and we should see our log file now, which we do. Let's open that up. So you can see here is the log file, and it parallels what we saw in the debugger. First we wrote out from the init event, then the onBegin request when the request first started from the web page, and it wrote out some of the information about the browser, the IP address, the URL, and then we hit the dispose event as the application shut down. So in this particular sample, we intervened in the processing of an HTTP module by adding an event for onBegin request. And as I mentioned earlier, there are a number of events where you can intervene and do various things. Here we were recording information, but you could perform any activity that you need at any of these points in time. In summary, in this video we learned how to create an HTTP filter by creating a class that implemented the HTTP module interface. There were two required methods, dispose and init, which we implemented. And then there's a list of methods which represent the various points in the processing of a page where you can intervene and do whatever functionality you need to do at those points. In this case, we implemented the begin request method, which intervenes at the very beginning of the request process, and we wrote out some information to a text file to simulate a simple logging process. I encourage you to download the source code that comes with this video. Take a look at it in more detail. I hope you found this video informative. This is Chris Pelz. Thank you very much for your time.